Hello and welcome to this Beyond Shakespeare exploring session. Today we'll be looking at Campaspe by John Lyly, his first play performed for the court on New Year's Day, 1584. This is a first run at a second look, so we'll be reading straight through, omitting stage directions, but not necessarily switching cameras on and off. This play was written for a children's company, the children of Blackfriars, with an assist from Queen Elizabeth's, Her Majesty's children. Not her own children, of course, a children's company that she was a patron of. However, our cast are all fully adult and extremely mature. Not in that way. Anyway, we have assembled a wonderful team of extremely clean and pure readers. Reading Alexander the Great, as well as the Prologue at Court and Solinus, we have...
Hello, I'm Dan, hailing to you from the west coast of the United States.
Excellent. And as the Prologue at the Blackfriars, as well as Mani's Aristotle and Phrygius, we have...
Alan Scott, based in Suffolk, east of England.
And as Clytus, Melippus, Page, and Perim, we have...
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Amisu, and I'm an author based in Romford.
And as Diogenes the Cynic, we have...
Alexandra, and this is the barrel the Athenians have forsaken me into.
I hope it wasn't a fish barrel, or at least a barrel of something that smells very pleasant. And as Hephaestion, Granichus, Chrysippus, Sylvius, and Milectus, we have...
Hi, I'm Eric, and I'm not going to remember that, but I'll pretend like I...
Just fake it till you make it. As Parmenio, Cleanthes, Apelles, and First Citizen, we have...
Hello, my name is Lynn, and I am even further north and west than Dan is in the United States.
Goodness me. Just refer to Google Maps. As Timoclea, Psillus, Crates, and the Epilogue at the Blackfriars, we have...
Rachael on the East Coast. Eastest most of all the actors right now in the US.
The East Coast is eastest most. And as Campaspe herself, Anaxarchus, Trico, and the Epilogue at Court, we have...
Riley Sparrow, actor in the East Midlands.
Yes. As distinguished from the West Midlands. There's some rivalry there. And I am your guest host, Liza Graham. Come back, Rob. All is forgiven. And I will also be reading Plato, Chrysis, Milo, and Lais. This, like I said, this will be a first run and a second look. We'll read straight through, omitting stage directions. And... without further ado, let us hear the prologue at the Blackfriars.
They that fear the stinging of wasps make fans of peacocks' tails, whose spots are like eyes. And Lepidus, which could not speak for the chatting of birds, set up a beast whose head was like a dragon. And we stand in awe of report, are compelled to set before our owl Pallas shield, thinking by her virtue to cover the other's deformity. It's a sign of famine to Egypt when Nilus flowed less than 12 cubits, or more than 18, and it may threaten despair unto us if we be less curious than you look for, or more cumbersome. But as Theseus, being promised to be brought to an eagle's nest, and travelling all the day, found but a wren in a hedge, yet said, "This is a bird," so we hope, if the shower of our swelling mountains seem to bring forth some elephant, perform but a mouse, you will gently say, "This is a beast." Basil, softly touched, yieldeth a sweet scent, but chafed in the hand a rank savour. We fear even so that our labours, slyly glanced on, will breed some content, but examined to the proof small commendation. The haste in performing shall be our excuse. There went 2 nights to the begetting of Hercules. Feathers appear not on the phoenix under 7 months, and the mulberry is 12 in budding. But our travails are like the hares, who at one time bringeth forth, nourisheth, and engendereth again, or like the brood of Troculus, whose eggs in the same moment they are laid become birds. But howsoever we finish our work, we crave pardon if we offend in matter, and patience if we transgress in manners. We have mixed mirth with counsel, and discipline with delight, thinking it not amiss in the same garden to sow pot herbs that we set flowers. But we hope, as harts that cast their horns, snakes their skins, eagles their bills, become more fresh for any other labour, so our charge being shaken off, we shall be fit for greater matters. But lest, like the Myndians, we make our great gates greater than our towns, and that our play runs out at the preface, we here conclude, wishing that, although there be in your precise judgments and universal mislike, yet we may enjoy your wonted courtesies a general silence.
We are ashamed that our bird which fluttered by twilight seeming a swan should prove a bat set against the sun. But as Jupiter placed Solinus' ass among the stars, and Alcibiades covered his pictures, being owls and apes, with a curtain embroidered with lions and eagles, so are we enforced upon a rough discourse to draw on a smooth excuse resembling the Perdides, who think to hide the crack in the stone by setting it deep in gold. The gods supped once with poor Bacchus. The Persian king sometimes shaved sticks. Our hope is, your highness will at this time lend an ear to an idle pastime. Apion, raising Homer from hell, demanded only who was his father, and we, calling Alexander from his grave, seek only who is his love. Whatsoever we present, we wish it may be thought the dancing of Agrippa his shadows, who in the moment they were seen were of any shape one would conceive, or lynxes, who having a quick sight to discern, have a short memory to forget. With us it is like to fare as with these torches, which giving light to others, consume themselves, and we showing the light to others, shame ourselves.
Parmenio, I cannot tell whether I should more commend in Alexander's victories courage or courtesy, in the one being a resolution without fear, in the other a liberality above custom. Thebes is razed, the people not racked, towers thrown down, bodies not thrust aside, a conquest without conflict, and a cruel war in a mild peace.
Clytus, it becometh the son of Philip to be none other than Alexander, therefore, seeing in the father a full perfection, who could have doubted in the son an excellency? For as the moon can borrow nothing else of the sun but light, so of a sire in whom nothing but virtue was, what could the child receive but singular? It is for turquoise to stain each other, not for diamonds. In the one to be made a difference in goodness, in the other, no comparison.
You mistake me, Parmenio. If whilst I commend Alexander, you imagine I call Philip into question, unless haply you conjecture, which none of judgment will conceive, that because I like the fruit, therefore I heave at the tree, or coveting to kiss the child, I therefore go about to poison the teat.
Aye, but Clytus, I perceive you are born in the east, and so never laugh but at the sun rising, which argueth, though a duty where you ought, no great devotion where you might.
We will make no controversy of that which there ought to be no question. Only this shall be the opinion of us both, that none was worthy to be the father of Alexander but Philip, nor any meet to be the son of Philip but Alexander.
Soft, Clytus, behold the spoils and prisoners, a pleasant sight to us because profit is joined with honor. Not much painful to them because their captivity is eased with mercy.
Fortune, thou didst never yet deceive virtue, because virtue never yet did trust fortune. Sword and fire will never get spoil, where wisdom and fortitude bear sway. O Thebes, thy walls were raised by the sweetness of the harp, but raised by the shrillness of the trumpet. Alexander had never come so near the walls, had Epaminondas walked about the walls, and yet might the Thebans have been merry in their streets if he had been to watch their towers. But destiny is seldom foreseen, never prevented. We are here now captives, whose necks are yoked by force, but whose hearts cannot yield by death. Come, Campaspe and the rest, let us not be ashamed to cast our eyes on him, on whom we feared not to cast our darts.
Madam, you need not doubt it is Alexander that is conqueror.
Alexander hath overcome, not conquered.
To bring all under subjection is to conquer.
He cannot subdue that which is divine.
Thebes was not.
Virtue is.
Alexander, as he tendereth virtue, so he will you. He drinketh not blood, but thirsteth after honour. He is greedy of victory, but never satisfied with mercy. In fight terrible, as becometh a captain. In conquest mild, as beseemeth a king. In all things than which nothing can be greater, he is Alexander.
Then if it be such a thing to be Alexander, I hope it shall be no miserable thing to be a virgin. For if he save our honours, it is more than to restore our goods. And rather do I wish he preserve our fame than our lives, which if he do, we will confess there can be no greater thing than to be Alexander.
Clytus, are these prisoners? Of whence these spoils?
Like your majesty, they are prisoners and of Thebes.
Of what calling or reputation?
I know not, but they seem to be ladies of honour.
I will know, madam, of whence you are I know, but who I cannot tell.
Alexander, I am the sister of Diogenes, who fought a battle with thy father before the city of Chirone, where he died, I say, which none can gainsay, valiantly.
Lady, there seems in your words sparks of your brother's deeds, but worse her fortune in your life than his death. Fear not, for you shall live without violence, enemies, or necessity. But what are you, fair lady? Another sister to Diogenes?
No sister to Diogenes, but a humble handmaid to Alexander, born of a mean parentage, but to extreme fortune.
Well, ladies, for so your virtues show you, whatsoever your births be, you shall be honorably entreated. Athens shall be your Thebes, and you shall not be as abjects of war, but as subjects to Alexander. Parmenio, conduct these honorable ladies into the city. Charge the soldiers not so much as in words to offer to them any offense, and let all wants be supplied, so far forth as shall be necessary for such persons and my prisoners. Hephaestion, it resteth now that we have as great care to govern in peace as conquer in war, that whilst arms cease, arts may flourish, and joining letters with lances, we endeavor to be as good philosophers as soldiers, knowing it no less praise to be wise than commendable to be valiant.
Your Majesty therein showeth that you have as great desire to rule as to subdue, and needs must that commonwealth be fortunate, whose captain is a philosopher and whose philosopher is a captain.
I serve instead of a master a mouse, whose house is a tub, whose dinner is a crust, and whose bed is a board.
Then art thou in a state of life which philosophers commend, a crumb for thy supper, an and for thy cup, and thy clothes for thy sheets, for natura paucis contenta.
Manes, it is pity to so proper a man should be cast away upon a philosopher, but that Diogenes, that dog, should have Manes, that dog bolt. It grieveth nature and spiteth art, the one having found the so dissolute, the absolute, I would say, in body, the other so singular in mind.
Are you merry? 'Tis a sign by the trip of your tongue and the toys of your head that you have done that today, which I have not done these 3 days.
What is that?
Dined.
I think Diogenes keeps but cold cheer.
I would it were so, but he keepeth neither hot nor cold.
What then, lukewarm? That made Manus run from his master that last day.
Manus had reason, for his name foretold as much.
My name? How so, sir boy?
You know that it is called Monza Movendo, because it stands still.
Good.
And thou art named Manes a Manendo, because thou runnest away.
Passing reasons. I did not run away, but retire.
To a prison, because thou wouldst have leisure to contemplate.
I will prove that my body was immortal, because it was in prison.
As how?
Did your masters never teach you that the soul is immortal?
Yes.
And the body is the prison of the soul?
True.
Why then thus, to make my body immortal, I put it to prison.
Oh, bad.
Excellent ill.
You may see how dull a fasting wit is. Therefore, Sylvius, let us go to supper with Granichus. Plato is the best fellow of all philosophers. Give me him that reads in the morning in the school and at noon in the kitchen.
And me.
Ah, sirs, my master is a king in his parlour for the body and a god in his study for the soul. Among all his men he commendeth one that is an excellent musician. Then stand I by and clap another on the shoulder and say, this is a passing good cook.
It is well done, Granichus. But give me pleasure that goes in at the mouth, not the ear. I'd rather fill my guts than my brains.
I serve Apelles, who feedeth me as Diogenes doth Manes. For at dinner the one preacheth abstinence, the other commendeth counterfeiting. When I would eat meat, he paints a spit, and when I thirst, oh, saith he, is not this a fair pot? And points to a table which contains the banquet of the gods. Where are many dishes to feed the eye, but not to fill the gut?
What dost thou then?
This doth he then, bring in many examples that some have lived by savours, and proveth that much easier it is to fat by colours, and tell of birds that have been fatted by painted grapes in winter, and how many have so fed their eyes with their mistress' picture that they never desire to take food, being glutted with the delight in their favours. Then doth he show me counterfeits, such as have surfeited with their filthy and loathsome vomits, and with the riotous bacchanals of the god Bacchus and his disorderly crew, which are painted all to the life in his shop. To conclude, I fare hardly, though I go richly, which maketh me, when I should begin to shadow a lady's face, to draw a lamb's head, and sometime to set to the body of a maid a shoulder of mutton, for semper animus mens est in patinis.
Thou art a god to me, for could I see but a cook's shop painted, I would make mine eyes fat as butter. For I have naught but sentences to fill my maw, as pluris occidit crapula quam gladius musa ignorantius amici. Repletion killeth delicately, and an old sore of abstinence. Socrates, the belly is the head's grave. Thus with sayings, not with meat, he makes a gallimaufry.
So, but how dost thou then live?
With fine jests, sweet air, and the dog's arms.
Well, for this time I shall staunch thy gut, and among pots and platters thou shalt see what it is to serve Plato.
For joy of Granichus, let's sing.
My voice is as clear in the evening as in the morning.
Another commodity of emptiness. Oh, for a bowl of fat canary, rich Palermo, sparkling sherry, some nectar else from Juno's dairy. Oh, these draughts would make us merry.
Oh, for a wench, a deal in faces, and in other daintier things, tickle down my with her embraces, fine dancing in such fairy rings.
Oh, for a plump fat leg of mutton, veal, lamb, capon, pid, and coney. None is happy but as a glutton. None an ass, but who wants money?
Wines indeed, and girls are good, but brave victuals feast the blood, for wenches wine and lusty cheer. Jove would leap down to serve it here.
I had never such ado to warn scholars to come before a king. First, I came to Chrysippus, a tall, lean, old madman, willing him presently to appear before Alexander. He stood staring on my face, neither moving his eyes nor his body. I, urging him to give some answer, he took up a book, sat down, and said nothing. Melissa, his maid, told me it was his manner, and that oft times she was fain to thrust meat into his mouth, for that he would rather starve than cease study. Well, thought I, seeing bookish men are so blockish, and so great clerks such simple courtiers, I will neither be partaker of their commons nor their commendations. From thence I came to Plato and to Aristotle, and to divers other, none refusing to come, saving an old obscure fellow, who, sitting in a tub, turned towards the sun, read Greek to a young boy. Him, when I willed to appear before Alexander, he answered, if Alexander would fain see me, let him come to me. If learn of me, let him come to me. Whatsoever it be, let him come to me. Why, said I, he is a king. He answered, why, I am a philosopher. Why, but he is Alexander. I, but I am Diogenes. I was half angry to see one so crooked in his shape, to be so crabbed in his sayings. So going my way, I said, thou shalt repent it, if thou comest not to Alexander. Nay, smiling, he answered me, Alexander may repent it, if he come not to Diogenes. Virtue must be sought, not offered. And so turning himself to his heel, he grunted, I know not what, like a pig under a tub. But I must be gone, the philosophers are coming.
It is a difficult controversy, Aristotle, and rather to be wondered at than believed, how natural causes should work supernatural effects.
I do not stand upon the apparition as seen in the moon, neither the demonium as Socrates, as that I cannot by natural reason give any reason of the ebbing and flowing of the sea, which makes me in the depths of my studies to cry out, O ens entium, miseri mea.
Cleanthes and you attribute so much to nature by searching for things which are not to be found, that whilst you study a cause of your own, you omit the occasion itself. There is no man so savage in whom resteth not this divine particle, that there is an omnipotent, eternal, and divine mover, which may be called God.
I am of this mind, that the first mover which you term God is the instrument of all the movings which we attribute to nature. The earth, which is mass, swimmeth on the sea, seasons divided in themselves, fruits growing in themselves, the majesty of the sky, the whole firmament of the world, and whatsoever else appeareth miraculous. What man almost of mean capacity can but prove it natural?
These causes shall be debated at our philosophers' feast, in which controversy I will take part with Aristotle, that there is natura naturans, and yet not God.
And I with Plato, that there is Deus Optimus Maximus, and not nature.
Here cometh Alexander.
I see, Hephaestion, that these philosophers are here attending for us.
They were not philosophers if they knew not their duties.
But I much marvel Diogenes should be so dogged.
I do not think, but his excuse will be better than Melippus' message.
I will go see him, Hephaestion, because I long to see him that would command Alexander to come, to whom all the world is like to come. Aristotle and the rest advance my coming from Thebes to Athens, from a place of conquest to a place of quiet, palace of quiet. I have resolved with myself in my court to have as many philosophers as I had in my camp soldiers. My court shall be a school wherein I will have used as great doctrine in peace as I I did in war discipline.
We are all here ready to be commanded, and glad we are that we are commanded, for that nothing better becometh kings than literature, which maketh them come as near the gods in wisdom as they do in dignity.
It is so, Aristotle, but yet there is among you, yea, and of your bringing up, that sought to destroy Alexander. Callisthenes Aristotle, whose treasons against his prince shall not be borne out with reasons of his philosophy.
If ever mischief entered into the heart of Callisthenes, let Callisthenes suffer for it. But that Aristotle ever imagined any such thing of Callisthenes, Aristotle doth deny.
Well, Aristotle, conjured may blind thee, and affection me, but in kings' causes I will not stand to scholars' arguments. This meeting shall be for a commandment, that you all frequent my court, instruct the young with rules, confirm the old with reasons. Let your lives be answerable to your learnings, lest my proceedings be contrary to my promises.
You said you would ask every one of them a question, which yesterday night none of us could answer.
I will. Plato, of all beasts, which is the subtlest?
That which man hitherto never knew.
Aristotle, how should a man be thought a god?
In doing a thing impossible for a man.
Chrysippus, which was the first, the day or the night?
A day by a day.
Indeed, strange questions must have strange answers. Cleanthes, what say you? Is life or death the stronger?
Life that suffereth so many troubles.
Crates, how long should a man live?
Till he think it better to die than live.
Anaxarchus, whether doth the sea or the earth bring forth most creatures?
The earth, for the sea is but a part of the earth.
Hephaestion, methinks they have answered all well, and in such questions I mean often to try them.
It is better to have in your court a wise man than in your ground a golden mine. Therefore would I leave war to study wisdom were I Alexander.
So would I, were I Hephaestion. But come, let us go and give release, as I promised, to our Theban thralls.
Thou art fortunate, Aristotle, that Alexander is thy scholar.
And you happy that he is your sovereign.
I could like the man well if he could be contented to be but a man.
He seeketh to draw near to the gods in knowledge, not to be a god.
Let us question a little with Diogenes why he went not with us to Alexander. Diogenes, thou didst forget thy duty that thou wentest not with us to the king.
And you your profession that you went to the king.
Thou takest as great pride to be peevish as others do glory to be virtuous.
And thou as great honour, being a philosopher, to be thought court-like, as others shame that be courtiers to be accounted philosophers.
These austere matters set aside. It's well known that thou didst counterfeit money.
And thou thy manners, in that thou didst not counterfeit money?
Thou hast reason to condemn the court, being both in body and mind too crooked for a courtier.
As good be crooked, and endeavour to make myself straight from the court, as to be straight and learn to be crooked at the court.
Thou thinkest it a grace to be opposite against Alexander.
And thou to be jump with Alexander.
Let us go, for in contemning him we shall better please him than in wondering at him.
Plato, what dost thou think of Diogenes?
To be Socrates, furious. Let's go.
Behold, Manus, where thy master is, seeking either for bones for his dinner or pins for his sleeves. I will go salute him.
Do so, but mum, not a word you saw Manus.
And stay thou behind, and will I go with Psilus.
All hail, Diogenes, to your proper person.
All hate to thy peevish condition.
Oh, dog.
What dost thou seek for here?
For a man and a beast.
That is easy without thy light to be found. Be not all these men?
Called men.
What beast is it thou lookst for?
The beast, my man. Monies,
He is a beast indeed that will serve thee.
And so is he that begat thee.
What wouldst thou do if thou shouldst find Manus?
Give him leave to do as he hath done before,
What's that?
to run away.
Why, hast thou no need of Manus?
It were a shame for Diogenes to have need of Manes, and for Manes to have no need of Diogenes.
But the king you were gone. Wouldst thou entertain any of us two?
Upon condition
What?
that you should tell me wherefore any of you both were good.
Why, I am a scholar and well seen in philosophy.
And I, apprentice and well seen in painting.
Well, then, Granichus, be thou a painter to amend thine ill face, and thou, Sylvius, a philosopher to correct thine evil manners. But who is that Manes?
I care not who I were, so I were not Manes.
You're taken tardy.
Let us slip aside, Granichus, to see the salutation between Manes and his master.
Manes, thou knowest the last day I threw away my dish to drink in my hand because it was superfluous. Now am I determined to put away my man and serve myself. Quia non egeo tui velde.
Master, you know a while ago I ran away, and so do I mean to do again. Quia sibio tibi non esse argentum.
I know I have no money, neither will I ever have a man. For I was resolved long ago, sithence, to put away both my slave, money and monies.
So I was determined to shake off both my dogs, Hunger and Diogenes.
Oh, sweet consent between a crowd and a Jew's harp.
Come, let's reconcile them.
It shall not need, for this is their use. Now do they dine one upon another.
How now, Manes? Art thou gone from thy master?
No, I did but now bind myself to him.
Why, you were at mortal jars.
In faith, no. We break a bitter jest one upon another.
Why, thou art as dogged as he.
My father knew them both little whelps.
Well, I will hie me after my master.
Why, is it supper time with Diogenes?
Aye, with him at all times when he hath meat.
Why then, every man to his home, and let us steal out anon.
Where shall we meet?
Why, at aliae vendibili suspensa hedera non est opus.
O Sylvius, habeo et teleco praeterentis, thou blessest me.
Stand aside, sir boy, till you be called. Hephaestion, how do you like the sweet face of Campaspe?
I cannot but commend the stout courage of Timoclea.
Without doubt, Campaspe has some great man to her father.
You know, Timoclea had Diogenes to her brother.
Timoclea still in thy mouth. Thou not in love?
Not I.
Not with Timoclea, you mean, where you resemble the lapwing who crieth boasted, where her nest is not. And so you lead me from espying your love with Campaspe. You cry, Timoclea.
Could I as well subdue kingdoms as I can my thoughts, or were I as far from ambition as I am from love, all the world would count me as valiant in arms as I know myself moderate in affection.
Is love a vice?
It is no virtue.
Well, now shalt thou see what small difference I make between Alexander and Hephaestion. And since thou hast been always partaker of my triumphs, thou shalt be partaker of my torments. I love Hephaestion. I love Campaspe, a thing far unfit for Macedonian, for a king, for Alexander. Why hangest thou down thy head, Hephaestion, blushing to hear that which I am not ashamed to tell?
Might my words crave pardon and my counsel credit, I would both discharge the duty of a subject, for so I am, and the office of a friend, for so I will.
Speak, Hephaestion, for whatsoever is spoken, Hephaestion speaketh to Alexander.
I cannot tell, Alexander, whether the report be more shameful to be heard or the cause sorrowful to be believed. What is the son of Philip, king of Macedon, become the subject of Campaspe, the captive of Thebes? Is that mind, whose greatness the world could not contain, drawn within the compass of an idle, alluring eye? Will you handle the spindle with Hercules, where you should shake the spear with Achilles? Is the warlike sound of drum and trump turned to the soft noise of lyre and lute? The neighing of barbed steeds, whose loudness filled the air with terror, and whose breath dimmed the sun with smoke, converted to delicate tunes and amorous glances. Oh, Alexander, that soft and yielding mind should not be in him, whose hard and unconquered heart hath made so many yield. But you love, grief, but whom? Campaspe, shame, made forsooth unknown, unnoble, and who can tell whether immodest, whose eyes are framed by art to enamor, and whose heart was made by nature to enchant. Aye, she is beautiful, yea, but not therefore chaste. Aye, but she is comely in all parts of the body. Yea, but she may be crooked in some part of the mind. Aye, but she's wise. Aye, but she is a woman. Beauty is like the blackberry, which seemeth red when it is not ripe, resembling precious stones that are polished with honey. Which the smoother they look, the sooner they break. It is thought wonderful among the seamen that Mughal of all the fishes is swiftest, is found in the belly of the Bret, out of all the slowest. And shall it not seem monstrous to wise men that the heart of the greatest conqueror of the world should be found in the hands of the weakest creature of nature, of a woman, of a captive? Ermines have fair skins, but foul livers, sepulchres, fresh colors, but rotten bones, women fair faces, but false hearts. Remember, Alexander, thou hast a camp to govern, not a chamber. Fall not from the armor of Mars to the arms of Venus, from the fiery assaults of war to the maidenly skirmishes of love, from displaying the eagle in thine ensign to set down the sparrow. I sigh, Alexander, that where fortune could not conquer, folly should overcome. But behold all the perfection that may be in Campaspe, a hair curling by nature, not art, sweet alluring eyes, a fair face, made in despite of Venus, and a stately port in disdain of Juno, a wit apt to conceive and quick to answer, a skin soft as silk, and as smooth as jet, a long white hand, a fine little foot. To conclude, all parts answerable to the best part. What of this? Though she have heavenly gifts, virtue and beauty, is she not of earthly metal, flesh and blood? You, Alexander, that would be a god, show yourself in this worse than a man, so soon to be both overseen and overtaken in a woman, whose false tears know their true times, whose smooth words wound deeper than sharp swords. There is no surfeit more dangerous than that of honey, or any poison so deadly as that of love. In the one, physic cannot prevail, nor in the other counsel.
My case were light, Hephaestion, and not worthy to be called love. If reason were a remedy, or sentences could salve, that sense cannot conceive. Little do you know, and therefore slightly do you regard, the dead embers in a private prison, person, or live coals in a great prince, whose passions and thoughts do as far exceed others in extremity as their callings do in majesty. An eclipse in the sun is more than the falling of a star. None can conceive the torments of a king unless he be a king, whose desires are not inferior to their dignities. And then judge, Hephaestion, if the agonies of love be dangerous in a subject, whether they be not more than deadly unto Alexander, whose deep and not to be conceived sighs cleave the heart in shivers, whose wounded thoughts can neither be expressed nor endured. Cease then, Hephaestion, with arguments to seek to repel that which their deity, the gods, cannot resist. And let this suffice to answer thee. That is a king that loveth, and Alexander, whose affections are not to be measured by reason, being immortal, nor I fear me to be born, being intolerable.
I must needs yield, neither reason nor counsel can be heard.
Yield, Hephaestion, for Alexander doth love, and therefore must obtain.
Suppose she loves not you. Affection cometh not by appointment or birth, and then as good hated as enforced.
I am a king and will command.
You may to yield to lust by force, but to consent to love by fear you cannot.
Why, what is that which Alexander may not conquer as he lists?
Why, that which you say the gods cannot resist, love.
I am a conqueror, she a captive. I as fortunate as she fair. My greatness may answer her wants, and the gifts of my mind, the modesty of hers. Is it not likely then that she should love? Is it not reasonable?
You say that in love there is no reason, and therefore there can be no likelihood.
No more, Hephaestion. In this case, I will use mine own counsel, and in all other thine advice. Thou mayest be a good soldier, but never a good lover. Call my page. Sirrah, go presently to Apelles, and will him to come to me without either delay or excuse.
I go.
In the mean season, to recreate my spirits, being so near, we will go see Diogenes and see where his tub is. Diogenes!
Who calleth?
Alexander, how happened it that you would not come out of your tub to my palace?
Because it was as far from my tub to your palace as from your palace to my tub.
Why then, dost thou owe no reverence to kings?
No,
Why so?
because they be no gods.
They be gods of the earth.
Yes, gods of earth.
Plato is not of thy mind.
I am glad of it,
Why?
because I would have none of Diogenes' mind but Diogenes.
If Alexander have anything that may pleasure Diogenes, let me know and take it.
Then take not from me that you cannot give me, the light of the world.
What dost thou want?
Nothing that you have,
I have the world at command.
and I in contempt.
Thou shalt live no longer than I will.
But I will die whether you will or no.
How should one learn to be content?
Unlearn to covet.
Hephaestion, were I not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes.
He is dogged, but discreet. I cannot tell how sharp, with a kind of sweetness, full of wit, yet too wayward.
Diogenes, when I come this way again, I will both see thee and confer with thee.
Do.
Now here come Apelles. Cometh Apelles. How now, Apelles? Is Venus's face yet finished?
Not yet. Beauty is not so soon shadowed, whose perfection cometh within the compass of either cunning or of color.
Well, let it rest unperfect, and come you with me, where I will show you that finished by nature that you have been trifling about by art.
Lady, I doubt whether there be any color so fresh that may shadow a countenance so fair.
Sir, I had thought you had been commanded to paint with your hand, not to gloss with your tongue. But as I have heard, it is the hardest thing in painting to set down a hard favour, which maketh you to despair of my face. Then shall you have as great thanks to spare your labour as to discredit your art.
Mistress, you neither differ from yourself nor your sex, for knowing your own perfection, you seem to dispraise that which men most commend, drawing by that mean into an admiration, where feeding themselves they fall into an ecstasy, your modesty being the cause of the one, and of the other your affections.
I am too young to understand your speech, though old enough to withstand your device. You have been so long used to colours, you can do nothing but colour.
Indeed, the colors I see, I fear will alter the color I have. But come, madam, will you draw near? For Alexander will be here anon. Sylvius, stay you here at the window. If any inquire for me, answer, non lubit esse domi.
It is always my master's fashion, when any fair gentlewoman is to be drawn within, to make me stay without, But if he should paint Jupiter like a bull, like a swan, like an eagle, then must Silas with one hand grind colors, and with the other hold the candle. But let him alone. The better he shadows her face, the more will he burn his own heart. And now if a man could meet with Manes, who, I dare say, looks as lean as if Diogenes dropped out of his nose.
Here comes Manes, who has as much meat in his maw as thou hast honesty in thy head.
Then I hope thou art very hungry.
They that know thee know that.
But dost thou not remember that we have certain liquor to confer withal?
Aye, but I have business. I must go cry a thing.
Why, what hast thou lost?
That which I never had, my dinner.
Foul lubber, wilt thou cry for thy dinner?
I mean, I must cry, not as one would say, cry, but cry, that is, make a noise.
Why, fool, that is all one, for if thou cry, thou must needs make a noise.
Boy, thou art deceived. Cry hath diverse significations and may be alluded to many things. Knave but one, and can be applied but to thee.
Profound manners.
We cynics are mad fellows. Didst thou not find I quipped thee?
No, verily. Why, what is a quip?
We great girders call it a short saying of a sharp wit, with a bitter sense in a sweet word.
How canst thou thus divide, define, dispute, and all on the sudden?
Wit will have his swing. I am bewitched, inspired, inflamed, infected.
Well, then will not I tempt thy giving spirit?
Do not, Silas, for thy dull head will be but a grindstone for my quick wit, which if thou wet with overthwarts, persitae actium est date. I have drawn blood at one's brains with a bitter bob.
Let me cross myself, for I die if I cross thee.
Let me do my business. I myself am afraid, lest my wit should wax warm, and then must it needs consume some hard head with fine and pretty jests. I am sometimes in such a vein, that for want of some dull pate to work on, I begin to gird myself.
The gods shield me from such a fine fellow, whose words melt wits like wax.
Well then, let us to the matter. In faith, my master meaneth tomorrow to fly.
It is a jest.
Is it a jest to fly? Shouldst thou fly so, should thou so repate it in earnest.
Well, I will be the crier.
Oyez, oyez, oyez!
Oyez, oyez, oyez!
All manner of men,
All manner of men,
women or children,
women or children,
that will come tomorrow into the marketplace,
that will come tomorrow into the marketplace,
between the hours of 9 and 10,
between the hours of 9 and 10,
shall see Diogenes the Cynic
shall see Diogenes the Cynic.
fly.
I do not think he will fly.
Tush, say fly.
Fly!
Now let us go, for I will not see him again till midnight. I have a back way into his tub.
Which way callest thou the back way, when every way is open?
I mean to come in at his back.
Well, let us go away, that we may return speedily.
I shall never draw your eyes well, because they blind mine.
Why then paint me without eyes, for I am blind.
Were you ever shadowed before of any?
No, and would you could so now shadow me, that I might not be perceived of any.
It were pity, but that so absolute a face should furnish Venus' temple amongst these pictures.
What are these pictures?
This is Leda, whom Jove deceived in likeness of a swan.
A fair woman, but a foul deceit.
This is Alcmena, unto whom Jupiter came in shape of Amphitryon her husband, and begat Hercules.
A famous son, but an infamous fact.
Well, he might do it because he was a god.
Nay, therefore it was evil done because he was a god.
This is Danae, into whose prison Jupiter drizzled golden shower and obtained his desire.
What gold can make one yield to desire?
This is Europa, whom Jupiter ravished. This Antiopa.
Were all the gods like this Jupiter?
There were many gods in this, like Jupiter.
I think those days love was well ratified among men on earth, when lust was so full authorized by the gods in heaven.
Nay, you may imagine there were women passing amiable, when there were gods exceeding amorous.
Were women never so fair, men would be false.
Were women never so false, men would be fond.
What counterfeit is this, Apelles?
Oh, this is Venus, the goddess of love.
What, be there also loving goddesses?
This is she hath power to command the very affections of the heart.
How is she hired? By prayer, by sacrifice, or bribes?
By prayer, sacrifice, and bribes.
What prayer?
Vows irrevocable.
What sacrifice?
Hearts ever sighing, never dissembling.
What bribes?
Roses and kisses. But were you never in love?
No, nor love in me.
Then you have injured many.
How so?
Because you have because you have been loved of many.
Flattered, perchance, of some.
Is it not possible that a face so fair and a wit so sharp, both without comparison, should not be apt to love?
If you begin to tip your tongue with cunning, I pray dip your pencil in colours, and fall to that you must do, not that you would do.
Parmenio, I cannot tell how it cometh to pass, that in Alexander nowadays there groweth an unpatient kind of life. In the morning he is melancholy, at noon solemn, at all times either more sour or severe than he was accustomed.
In kings' causes I rather love to doubt than conjecture, and think it better to be ignorant than inquisitive. They have long ears and stretched arm, in whose head suspicion is a proof, and to be accused is to be condemned.
Yet, between us, there can be no danger to find out the cause, for that there is no malice to withstand it. It may be an unquenchable thirst of conquering maketh him unquiet. It is not unlikely his long ease hath altered his humour. That he should be in love, it is not impossible.
In love? Clytus? No, it is far from his thought, as treason is in ours. He whose ever waking eye, whose never tired heart, whose body patient of labor, whose mind unsatiable of victory, hath always been noted, cannot so soon be melted into the weak conceits of love. Aristotle told him there were many words, and that he hath not worlds, and that he had not conquered one that gapeth for all, galleth Alexander. But here he cometh.
Parmenio and Clytus, I would have you both ready to go into Persia about an ambassage no less profitable to me than to yourselves honorable.
We are ready at all commands, wishing nothing else but continually to be commanded.
Well, then withdraw yourselves till I have further considered of this matter. Now will we see how Apelles go forth. Forward, I doubt me that nature hath overcome art, and her countenance his cunning.
You love, and therefore think anything.
But not so far in love with Campaspe as with Bucephalus, if occasion seem either of conflict or of conquest.
Occasion cannot want, if will do not. Behold, all Persia swelling in the pride of their own power, The Scythians, careless what courage or fortune can do. The Egyptians, dreaming in the soothsaying of their augurs and gaping over the smoke of their beasts' entrails. All these, Alexander, are to be subdued, if that world be not slipped out of your head, which you have sworn to conquer with that hand.
I confess, the labor's fit for Alexander, and yet recreation necessary among so many assaults, bloody wounds, intolerable troubles. Give me leave a little, if not to sit, yet to breathe. And doubt not, but Alexander can, when he will, throw affections as far from him as he can cowardice. But behold, Diogenes talking with one at his tub.
1 penny, Diogenes. I am a cynic.
You made thee a beggar that first gave thee anything.
Why, if thou wilt give nothing, nobody will give thee.
I want nothing till the springs dry and the earth perish.
I gather for the gods.
I care not, and I care not for those gods that want money.
Thou art a right cynic that will give nothing.
Thou art not that will beg anything.
Alexander! King Alexander, give a poor cynic a groat.
It's not for a king to give a groat.
Then give me a talent.
It is not for a beggar to ask a talent. Away, Apelles! Apelles?
Here, oh no.
Now, gentlewoman, doth not your beauty put the painter to his trump?
Yes, my lord, seeing so disordered a countenance, he feareth he shall shadow a deformed counterfeit.
Would he could colour the life with the feature. And methinketh, Apelles, were you as cunning as report saith you are, you may paint flowers as well with sweet smells, as fresh colours, observing in your mixture such things as should draw near to their savours.
Your Majesty must know it is no less hard to paint savours than virtues. Colors can neither speak nor think.
Where do you first begin when you draw any picture?
The proposition of the face in just compass as I can.
I would begin with the eye as a light to all the rest.
If you will paint as you are a king, your Majesty may begin where you please, but as you would be a painter, you must begin with the face.
Aurelius would in 1 hour colour 4 faces.
I marvel in half an hour he did not 4.
Why? Is it so easy?
No, but he doth it so homely.
When will you finish Campaspe?
Never finish, for always in absolute beauty there is somewhat above art.
Why should not I by labour be as cunning as Apelles?
God shield you should have cause to be so cunning as Apelles.
Methinketh 4 colours are sufficient to shadow any countenance, and so it was in the time of Phrygius.
Then had men fewer fancies, and women not so many favors. For now, if the hair of her eyebrows be black, yes, must the hair of her head be yellow. The attire of her head must be different from the habit of her body, else must the picture seem like a blazon of ancient armory, not like the sweet delight of new-found amiableness. For in the garden not diversity of odors makes a more sweet savor. Or as in music diverse strings cause a more delicate consent, so in painting the more colors, the better counterfeit, observing black for a ground and the rest for grace.
Lend me thy pencil, Apelles. I will paint, and thou shalt judge.
Here.
The coal breaks.
You lean too hard.
Now it blacks not.
You lean too soft.
This is awry.
Your eye goeth not with your hand.
Now it is worse.
Your hand goeth not with your mind.
Nay, if all be too hard or soft, so many rules and regards that one's hand, one's eye, one's mind must all draw together. I had rather be setting of a battle than the blunting of a board. How have I done here?
Like a king.
I think so, but nothing more like a painter. Well, Apelles, Campaspe is finished as I wish. Dismiss her and bring presently her counterfeit after me.
I will.
Now, Hephaestion, doth not this matter cotton as I would? Campaspe looketh pleasantly. Liberty will increase her beauty, and my love shall advance her honor.
I will not conquer your majesty, for time must wear out that love hath wrought, and reason wean what appetite nursed.
How stately she passeth by, yet how soberly. A sweet consent in her countenance, with a chaste disdain. Desire mingled with coyness, and I cannot tell how to term it. Cursed, yielding modesty.
Let her pass.
So she shall, for the fairest on the earth.
I shall be hanged for tarrying so long.
Pray God my master be not flown before I come.
Away, manners, my master doth come.
Where have you been all this while?
Nowhere but here.
Who was here since my coming?
Nobody.
Ungracious wag, I perceive you have been loitering. Was Alexander nobody?
He was a king, I meant no mean body.
I will cudgel your body for it, and then I will say it was no body, because it was no honest body. Away, in. Unfortunate Apelles, and therefore infortunate because Apelles, hast thou, by drawing her beauty, brought to pass that thou canst scarce draw thine own breath. And by so much more thou hast increased thy care, by how much more thou hast showed thy cunning. Was it not sufficient to behold the fire and warm thee? But with Satyrs thou must kiss the fire and burn thee. O Campaspe, Campaspe, art must yield to nature, reason to appetite, wisdom to affection. Could Pygmalion entreat by prayer to have his ivory turned into flesh, and cannot Apelles obtain by plaints to have the picture of his love changed to life? Is painting so far inferior to carving? Or dost thou, Venus, more delight to be hewed with chisels than shadowed with colors? What Pygmalion, or what Perigoteles, or what Lysippus is he that ever made thy face so fair, or spread thy fame so far as I? Unless Venus, in this thou enviest mine art, that in coloring my sweet Campaspe, I have left no place by cunning to make thee so amiable. But alas, she is paramour to a prince. Alexander, the monarch of the earth, hath both her body and affection. But what is it the kings can not obtain by prayers, threats, and promise? Will not she think it better to sit under a cloth of estate like a queen than in a poor shop like a hussif, and esteem it sweeter to be the concubine of the Lord of the world than spoused to a painter in Athens? Yes, yes, Apelles, thou mayest swim against the stream after the crab, and feed against the wind with the deer, and peck against the steel with the cockatrice. Stars are to be looked at, not reached at. Princes to be yielded unto, not contended with. Campaspe to be honored, not obtained. To be painted, not possessed of thee. O fair face, O unhappy hand, why didst thou draw it so fair a face? O beautiful countenance, the express image of Venus, but somewhat fresher, the only pattern of that eternity which Jupiter, dreaming of a sleep, could not conceive again waking. Blush, Venus, for I am ashamed to end thee. Now must I paint things impossible for mine art, but agreeable with my affections. Deep and hollow sighs, sad and melancholy thoughts, wounds and slaughters of conceits, a life posting to death, a death galloping from life, a wavering constancy, an unsettled resolution, and whatnot, Apelles, and what but Apelles? But as they are shaken with a fever, but as they that are shaken with a fever are not to be warmed with clothes, not groans, and he that melteth in a consumption is to be recured by culuses, not conceits. So the feeding canker of my care, the never-dying worm of my heart, is to be killed by counsel, not cries, by applying of remedies, not by replying of reasons. And sith in case desperate there must be used medicines that are extreme, I will hazard that little life that is left to restore the greater part that is lost. And this shall be my first practice. For wit must work where authority is not. As soon as Alexander hath viewed this portraiture, I will by device give it a blemish, that by means she may come again to my shop, and then as good it were to utter my love, to die with denial, and to conceal it and live in despair. Cupid and my Campaspe played at cards for kisses. Cupid paid. He stands his quiver, bow and arrows, his mother's doves and teams of sparrows, loses them too, then down he throws the coral of his lips, the rose growing on his cheek, but none knows how. With these, the crystal of his brow, and then the dimples of his chin, and these did my Campaspe win. At last he set her both his eyes, she won, and Cupid blind did rise. O love, has she done this to thee? What shall, alas, become of me?
This is the place, the day, the time that Diogenes hath appointed to fly.
I will not lose the flight of so fair a fowl as Diogenes is, though my master cudgel my nobody as he threatened.
What, Silas, will the beast wag his wings today?
We shall hear, for here cometh Manes. Manes, will it be?
Be? He were best be as cunning as a bee, or else shortly he will not be at all.
How, is he French to fly? Hath he feathers?
Thou art an ass. Capons, geese, and owls have feathers. He hath found Daedalus' old waxen wings, and hath been piercing them this month. He is so broad in the shoulders. Oh, you shall see him cut the air even like a tortoise.
Methinks a wiser man should not be so mad. His body must needs be too heavy.
Why, he's eaten nothing this night but cork and feathers.
Touch him, Manes.
He is so light I can scarce keep him from flying at midnight. See, they begin to flock, and behold, my master bustles himself to fly.
Ye wicked and bewitched Athenians, whose bodies make the earth to groan and whose breath infects the air with stench, come ye to see Diogenes fly. Diogenes comes to see you sink. You call me dog. So I am, for I long to gnaw the bones in your skin. You term me an hater of men? No, I am a hater of your manners. Your lives dissolute, not fearing death, will prove your deaths desperate, not hoping for life. What do you else in Athens but sleep in the day and surfeit in the night? Back gods in the morning with pride, in the evening belly gods with gluttony. You flatter kings and call them gods. Speak truth of yourselves and confess you are devils. From the bee you have taken not the honey but the wax to make your religion, framing it to the time, not the truth. Your filthy lust you collar under a courtly colour of love, injuries abroad under the title of policies at home, and secret malice creepeth under the name of public justice. You have caused Alexander to dry up springs and plant vines, to sow rocket and weed endive, to shear sheep and shrine foxes. All conscience is sealed at Athens. Swearing comes of a hot metal, lying of a quick wit, flattery of a flowing tongue, undecent talk of a merry disposition. all things are lawful at Athens. Either you think there are no gods, or I must think ye are no men. You build as though you should live forever, and surfeit as though you should die tomorrow. None teaches true philosophy but Aristotle, because he was the king's schoolmaster. Oh, times. Oh, men. Oh, corruption in manners. Remember that green grass must turn to dry hay. When you sleep, you are not sure to wake, and when you rise, not certain to lie down. Look you never so high, your heads must lie level with your feet. Thus have I flown over your disordered lives, and if you will not amend your manners, I will study to fly further from you, that I may be nearer to honesty.
Thou ravest, Diogenes, for thy life is different from thy words. Did not I see thee come out of a brothel house?
It was no shame. It was no shame to go out, but a shame to go in.
It were a good deed, Manus, to beat thy master.
You were as good. Eat my master.
Hast thou made us all fools, and wilt thou not fly?
I tell thee, unless thou be honest, I will fly.
Dog, take a bone.
Thy father need fear no dogs, but dogs thy father.
We will tell Alexander that thou reprovest him behind his back.
And I will tell him that you flatter him before his face.
We will cause all the boys in the street to hiss at thee.
Indeed, I think the Athenians have their children ready for any vice, because they be Athenians.
Why, master? Means you not to fly?
No, Manes, not without wings.
Everybody will account you a liar.
No, I warrant you, for I always say the Athenians are mischievous.
I care not. It was sport enough for me to see these old huddles hit home.
Nor I.
Come, let us go, and hereafter when I mean to rail upon anybody openly, it shall be given out. I will fly.
Campaspe, it is hard to judge whether thy choice be more unwise or the chance unfortunate. Dost thou prefer? But stay, utter not that in words which maketh thine ears to glow with thoughts. Tush! Better thy tongue wag than thy heart break. Hath a painter crept further into thy mind than a prince? Apelles than Alexander? Fond wench! The baseness of thy mind bewrays the meanness of thy birth. But alas! Affection is a fire which kindleth as well in the brambles as in the oak, and catcheth hold where it first lighteth, not where it may best burn. Larks that mount aloft in the air build their nests below the earth, and women that cast their eyes upon kings may place their hearts upon vassals. A needle will become thy fingers better than a lute, and a distaff is fitter for thy hand than a sceptre. Ants live safely till they have gotten wings, and Jupiter is not blown up till it hath gotten a high top. The mean estate is without care, as long as it continueth without pride. But here comes Apelles, in whom I would there were the like affection.
Gentlewoman, the misfortune I had with your picture will put you through some pains to sit again to be painted.
It is small pains for me to sit still, but infinite for you to draw still.
Oh no, madam, to paint Venus was a pleasure, but to shadow the sweet face of Campaspe, it is heaven.
If your tongue were made of the same flesh that your heart is, your words would be as your thoughts are. But such a common thing it is amongst you to commend, that oftentimes for fashion's sake you call them beautiful, whom you know black.
What might men do to be believed?
Wet their tongues on their hearts?
So they do, and speak as they think.
Oh, would they did.
I would they did not.
Why would you have them dissemble?
Not in love, but their love. But will you give me leave to ask you a question without offense?
So that you will answer me another without excuse.
Whom do you love best in the world?
He that made me last in the world.
Oh, that was a god.
I had thought it had been a man. But whom do you honour most, Apelles?
The thing that is likest you, Campaspe.
My picture?
I dare not venture upon your person. But come, let us go in, for Alexander will think it long till we return.
We hear nothing of our embassage, a colour be like to blare our eyes, or tickle our ears, or inflame our hearts. But what doth Alexander in the mean season but use for Tantara, sol fala, for his hard couch, down beds for his handful of water, his standing cup of wine?
Clytus, I mislike this new delicacy and pleasing peace. For what else do we see now than a kind of softness in every man's mind? Bees to make their hives and soldiers' helmets, our steeds furnished with footcloths of gold instead of saddles of steel, more time to be required to scour the rust of our weapons than there was wont to be in subduing the countries of our enemies. Since Alexander fell from his hard armor to his soft robes, behold the face of the court. Youths that were wont to carry devices of victory on their shields, engrave now posies of love in their rings. They that were accustomed on trotting horses to charge the enemy with a lance, now in easy coaches ride up and down to court ladies. Instead of sword and target to hazard of their lives, use pen and paper to paint their loves. Yea, such a fear and faintness is grown in court that they wish rather to hear the blowing of a horn to hunt than the sound of a trumpet to fight. Oh, Philip, wert thou alive to see this alteration, thy men turned to women, thy soldiers to lovers, gloves worn in velvet caps instead of plumes and graven helmets, thou wouldst either die among them for sorrow or confound them for anger.
Cease, Parmenio, lest in speaking what becometh thee not, thou feel what liketh thee not. Truth is never without a scratched face, whose tongue, although it cannot be cut out, yet must it be tied up.
It grieveth me not a little for Hephaestion, who thirsteth for honor, not ease, but such is his fortune and nearness in friendship to Alexander, that he must lay a pillow under his head when he would put a target in his hand. But let us draw in, to see how well it becomes them to tread a measure and a dance that were wont to set the order for a march. I have now, Campaspe, made almost an end.
You told me, Apelles, you would never end.
Never end my love, for it shall be eternal.
That is neither to have beginning nor ending.
You are disposed to mistake. I hope you do not mistrust.
What will you say if Alexander perceive your love?
I will say it is no treason to love.
But how if he will not suffer thee to see my person?
Then I will gaze continually on thy picture.
That will not feed thy heart.
Yet it shall fill mine eye. Besides, the sweet thoughts, the sure hopes, thy protested faith will cause me to embrace thy shadow continually in mine arms, of the which by strong imagination I will make a substance.
Well, I must be gone, but this assure yourself, that I had rather be in thy shop grinding colours than in Alexander's court following higher fortunes. Foolish wench, what hast thou done, that, alas, which cannot be undone, and therefore I fear me undone? But content is such a life, I care not for abundance. O Apelles, thy love cometh from the heart, but Alexander's from the mouth. The love of kings is like the blowing of winds, which whistles sometimes gently among the leaves, and straightways turn the trees up by the roots, or fire which warmeth far off and burneth near hand, or the sea which maketh men hoist their sails in a flattering calm, and to cut their masts in a rough storm. They place affection by times, by policy, by appointment. If they frown, who dares call them unconstant? If betray secrets, who will term them untrue? If fall to other loves, who trembles not if he call them unfaithful? In kings there can be no love but to queens, for as near must they meet in majesty as they do in affection. It is requisite to stand aloof from king's love, Jove and lightning.
Now, Apelles, gather thy wits together. Campaspe is no less wise than fair. Thyself must be no less cunning than faithful. It is no small matter to be rival with Alexander.
Apelles, you must come away quickly with the picture. The king thinketh that, now you have painted it, you play with it.
If I would play with pictures, I have enough at home.
None, perhaps, you like so well.
It may be I have painted none so well.
I have known many fairer faces.
And I many better boys.
I have brought my sons, Diogenes, to be taught of thee.
What can thy sons do?
You shall see their qualities. Dance, sirrah. How like you this? Doth he well?
The better, the worser.
The music very good.
The musicians very bad, who only study to have their strings in tune, never framing their manners to order.
Now shall you see the other. Tumble, sirrah. How like you this? Why do you laugh?
To see a wag that was born to break his neck by destiny, to practice it by art.
This dog will bite me. I will not be with him.
Fear not, boy. Dogs eat no thistles.
I marvel what dog thou art, if thou be a dog.
When I am hungry, a mastiff. And when my belly is full, a spaniel.
Dost thou believe that there are 80 gods, that art thou so dogged?
I must needs believe there are gods, for I think thee an enemy to them.
Why so?
Because thou hast taught one of thy sons to rule his legs and not to follow learning, the other to bend his body every way and his mind no way.
Thou doest nothing but snarl and bark like a dog.
It is the next way to drive away a thief.
Now shall you hear the third, who sings like a nightingale.
I care not, for I have heard a nightingale sing herself.
Sing, sirrah.
What bird so sings yet does so wail? Oh, 'tis the ravished nightingale. Jug, 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 taroo, she cries, and still her woes at midnight rise. Brave prick song, who is now we hear, none but the lark so shrill and clear. Now at heaven's gate she claps her wings, the morn not waking till she sings. Hark, hark, what a pretty throat, poor Robin Redbreast tunes his note. Hark, how the jolly cuckoos sing, cuckoo to welcome in the spring, cuckoo to welcome in the spring.
Lo, Diogenes, I am sure thou canst not do so much.
But there is never a thrush but can.
What hast thou taught manners, thy man?
To be as unlike as may be thy sons.
He has taught me to first lie hard and run away.
How sayest thou, Perim? Wilt thou be with him?
Aye, so he will teach me first to run away.
Thou needst not be taught, thy legs are so nimble.
How sayest thou, my lord? Wilt thou be with him?
Nay, hold your peace, he shall not.
Why?
There is not room enough for him and me both to tumble in one tub.
Well, Diogenes, I perceive my sons brook not thy manners.
I thought no less when they knew my virtues.
Very well, Diogenes. Thou needst not have scraped roots if thou wouldst have followed Alexander.
Nor thou have followed Alexander if thou hadst scraped roots.
I fear me, Apelles, that thine eyes have blabbed which thy tongue durst not. What little regard hadst thou, whilst Alexander viewed the counterfeit Campaspe, thou stoodst gazing on her countenance. If he espy, or but suspect, thou must needs twice perish, with his hate and thine own love. Thy pale looks, when he blushed, thy sad countenance when he smiled, thy sighs when he questions, may breed in him a jealousy, perchance a frenzy. O love, I never knew before what thou wert, and now thou hast made me that I know not what myself am. Only this I know, that I must endure intolerable passions for unknown pleasures. Dispute not the cause, wretch, but yield to it. For better it is to melt with desire than wrestle with love. Cast thyself on thy careful bed. Be content to live unknown and die unfound. O Campaspe, I have painted thee in my heart. Painted, nay, contrary to mine art, imprinted, and that in such deep characters that nothing can raise it out unless they rub thy heart out.
It shall go hard, but this piece shall bring us some pleasure.
Down with arms and up with legs. This is a world for the nonce.
Sweet youths, if you knew what it were to save your sweet blood, you would not foolishly go about to spend it. What delight can there be in gashing to make foul scars in fair faces and crooked manes in straight legs, as though men being born goodly by nature would of purpose become deformed by folly, and all forsooth for a new-found term called valiant, a word which breedeth more quarrels than the sense can commendation.
It is true, Lais, a feather bed hath no fellow, good drink makes good blood, and shall pelting words spill it?
I mean to enjoy the world and draw out my life at the wire drawers, not to cut it off at the cutlers.
You may talk of war, speak big, conquer worlds with great words, but stay at home where instead of alarums you shall have dances, for hot battles with fierce men, gentle skirmishes with fair women. These pewter coats can never sit so well as satin doublets. Believe me, you cannot conceive the pleasure of peace, unless you despise the rudeness of war.
It is so. But see, Diogenes prying over in his tub. Diogenes, what sayest thou to such a morsel?
I say, I would spit it out of my mouth, because it should not poison my stomach.
Thou speakest as thou art. It is no meat for dogs.
I am a dog, and philosophy rates me from carrion.
Uncivil wretch, whose manners are answerable to thy calling! The time was thou wouldst have had my company, had it not been, as thou saidst, too dear.
I remember there was a thing that I repented me of, and now thou hadst told it. Indeed, it was too dear of nothing, and thou dear to nobody.
Down, villain, or I will have thy head broken.
Will you couch?
Avaunt, cur! Come, sweet lass, let us go to some place and possess peace. But first let us sing. There is more pleasure in timing of a voice than in a volley of shot.
La.
Now let us make haste, lest Alexander find us here.
Methinketh, Hephaestion, you are more melancholy than you were accustomed, but I perceive it is all for Alexander. You cannot either brook this peace nor my pleasure. Be of good cheer, though I wink, I sleep not.
Melancholy I am not, nor well content, for I know not how. There is such a rust crept into my bones with this long ease, that I fear I shall not scour it out with infinite labors.
Yes, yes, if all the travails of conquering the world will set either thy body or mine in tune, we will undertake them. But what think you of Apelles? Did you ever see any so perplexed? He neither answered directly to any question, nor looked steadfastly upon anything. I hold my life. The painter is in love.
It may be, for commonly we see it incident in artificers to be enamored of their own works, as Archidamus of the wooden dove, Pygmalion of his ivory image, Arachne of his wood swan, especially painters who enjoy playing with their conceits, now coveting to draw the glancing eye, then a rolling, now a winking, still mending it, never ending it, till they be caught with it. Then, poor souls, they kiss the colors with their lips, with which before they were loath to taint their fingers.
I will find it out. Page, go speedily for Apelles. Will him to come hither, and when you see us earnestly in talk, suddenly cry out, Apelles' shop is on fire!
It shall be done.
Forget not your lesson.
I marvel what your device shall be.
The event shall prove.
I pity the poor painter, if he be in love.
Pity him not, I pray thee, that severe gravity set aside. What do you think of love?
As the Macedonians do of their herb beet, which looking yellow in the ground and black in the hand, think it better seen than touched.
But what do you imagine it to be?
A word, by superstition thought a god, by use turned to an humor, by self-will made a flattering madness.
Ah, you are too hard-hearted to think so of love. Let us go to Diogenes. Diogenes, thou mayest think it somewhat that Alexander cometh to thee again so soon.
You come to learn, you could not come soon enough. If to laugh, you be come too soon.
It would better become thee to be more courteous and frame thyself to please.
And you better to be less if you durst displease.
And what dost thou think of the time we have here?
That we have little and lose too much.
If one be sick, what wouldst thou have him do?
Be sure that he make not his physician his heir.
If thou mightest have thy will, how much ground would content thee?
As much as you, in the end, must be contented withal.
What? A world?
No. The length of my body.
Hephaestion, shall I be a little pleasant with him?
You may, but he will be very perverse with you.
It skilleth not. I cannot be angry with him. Diogenes, I pray thee, what dost thou think of love?
A little worser than I can of hate.
And why?
Because it is better to hate the things which make to love than to love the things which give occasion to hate.
Why? Be not women the best creatures in the world?
Next men and bees.
What dost thou dislike chiefly in a woman?
One thing.
What?
That she is a woman.
In my opinion, thou wert never born of a woman, that thou thinkest so hardly of woman. But now cometh Apelles, who I am sure is as far from my thought as thou art from his cunning. Diogenes, I will have thy cabin removed nearer to my court, because I will be a philosopher.
And when you have done so, I pray you remove your court further from my cabin, because I will not be a courtier.
But here cometh Apelles. Apelles, what piece of work have you in hand?
Oh, none in hand, if it like your majesty, but I am devising a platform in my head.
I think your hand put it in your head. Is it nothing about Venus?
No, but something above Venus.
Apelles, Apelles, look about you. Your shop is on fire.
Why me? If the picture of Campaspe be burnt, I am undone.
Stay, Apelles, no haste. It is your heart is on fire, not your shop. And if Campaspe hang there, I would she were burnt. But have you the picture of Campaspe? Belike you love her well, that you care not though all be lost, so she be safe.
Not love her, but your majesty knows that painters in their last works are said to excel themselves, and in this I have so much pleased myself, that the shadow as much delighteth me, being an artificer, as the substance doth others that are amorous.
You lay your colours grossly, though I could not paint in your shop, I can spy into your excuse. Be not ashamed, Apelles. It is a gentleman's sport to be in love. Call hither Campaspe. Methinks I might have been made privy to your affection, though my counsel had not been necessary. Yet my countenance might have been thought requisite. But Apelles forsooth loveth underhand, yea, and under Alexander's nose, and I say no more.
Apelles loveth not so, but he liveth to do as Alexander will.
Campaspe, here is news. Apelles is in love with you.
It pleaseth your majesty to say so.
Hephaestion, I will try her too. Campaspe, for the good qualities I know in Apelles and the virtue I see in you, I am determined you shall enjoy one another. How say you, Campaspe? Would you say aye?
Your handmaid must obey if you command.
Think you not, Hephaestion, that she would fain be commanded?
I am no thought catcher, but I guess unhappily.
I will not enforce marriage where I cannot compel love.
But your majesty may move a question where you be willing to have a match.
Believe me, Hephaestion, these parties are agreed. They would have me both priest and witness. Apelles, take Campaspe. Why move you not? Campaspe, take Apelles. Will it not be? If you be ashamed one of the other, by my consent you shall never come together. But dissemble not, Campaspe. Do you love Apelles?
Pardon, my lord, I love Apelles.
Apelles, it were a shame for you, being loved so openly of so fair a virgin, to say the contrary. Do you love Campaspe?
Only Campaspe.
Two loving worms, Hephaestion, I perceive. Alexander cannot subdue the affections of men, though he conquer their countries. Love falleth like dew as well upon the low grass as upon the high cedar. Sparks have their heat, ants their gall, or flies their spleen. Well, enjoy one another. I give it thee frankly, Apelles. Thou shalt see that Alexander maketh but a toy of love, and leadeth affection in fetters, using fancy as a fool to make him sport, or a minstrel to make him merry. It is not the amorous glance of an eye can settle an idle thought in the heart. No, no. It's a children's game, a life for seamsters and scholars. The one pricking in clouds have nothing else to think on. The other picking fancies out of books have little else to marvel at. Go, Apelles, take with you your Campaspe. Alexander is cloyed with looking on that which thou wonderest at.
Thanks to your majesty on bended knee. You have honored Apelles.
Thanks with bowed heart, you have blessed Campaspe.
Page, go warn Clytus and Parmenio and the other lords to be in a readiness. Let the trumpet sound, strike up the drum, and I will presently into Persia. How now, Hephaestion? Is Alexander able to resist love as he lists?
The conquering of Thebes was not so honorable as the subduing of these thoughts.
It were a shame Alexander should desire to command the world as if he could not command himself. But come, let us go. I will try whether I can better bear my hand with my heart than I could with mine eye. And, good Hephaestion, when all the world is one, and every country is thine and mine, either find me out another to subdue, or of my word, I will fall in love.
Where the rainbow toucheth the tree, no caterpillars will hang on the leaves. Where the glowworm creepeth in the night, no adder will go in the day. We hope in the ears where our travails be lodged, no carping shall harbor in those tongues. Our exercises must be as your judgment is, resembling water, which is always of the same color into what it runneth. In the Trojan horse lay couched soldiers with children, and in heaps of many words we fear diverse unfit, among some allowable, but as Demosthenes with often breathing up the hill amended his stammering, so we hope with sundry labors against the hair to correct our studies. If the tree be blasted that blossoms, the fault is in the wind, and not in the root. And if our pastimes be misliked that have been allowed, you must impute it to the malice of others, and not our endeavor. And so we rest in good case, if you rest well content.
We cannot tell whether we have fallen among Diomedes' birds or his horses. The one received some men with sweet notes, the other bit all men with sharp teeth. But as Homer's gods conveyed them into clouds, whom they would have kept from curses, and as Venus, lest Adonis should be pricked with the stings of adders, covered his face with the wings of swans, so we hope, being shielded with your highness' countenance, we shall, though hear the neighing, yet not feel the kicking of those jades, and receive, though no praise, which we cannot deserve, yet a pardon, which in all humility we desire. As yet we cannot tell what we should term our labours, iron or bullion, only it belongeth to your majesty to make them fit either for the forge or the mint, current by the stamp or counterfeit by the anvil. For as nothing is to be called white, unless it had been named white by the first creator, so can there be nothing thought good in the opinion of others, unless it be christened good by the judgment of yourself. For ourselves again, we are those torches, wax of which, being in your highness' hands, you make doves or vultures, roses or nettles, laurel for a garland, or elder for a disgrace.
Finis, and thus ends the play of Campaspe. What Queen Elizabeth thought of it, we will never know. Maybe we know. I don't know if her reaction is recorded, but beautiful reading by all. And now we move to a very quick post-show discussion. What an amazing, what a fun play. And for me, the character it's a bunch of really well-drawn characters. For me, the person who leaps off the page is Diogenes. And Alexandra, wonderful job. And how did it feel being Diogenes?
Yeah, it's wonderful to get the opportunity to just be honest, like bitingly honest to everybody, and tell the world about itself. It's a great part to play. I've been saying in the chat that a lot of this is taken from Diogenes Laertius's book about different Diogenes, just happen to have the same name, about philosophers that includes some stories about Diogenes. So a lot of these events are things that people might recognize from sort of tales about him, whereas I have no idea how much of the other stuff that happens in terms of the philosopher interactions and also the love story with Campaspe was entirely new to me. And yeah, like the other thing that I find really fascinating in this play is the Apelles Campaspe romance, which is interesting and disturbing, and yeah.
Yeah, and beautiful reading of Apelles and Campaspe by our two artists. And yes, what struck me about it is that it isn't just necessarily a woman being fought over by two men, that Campaspe also has agency in this, or that if she feels that love has robbed her of her wit, her wisdom, she seems to know that she's choosing the less advantageous choice. Bryony, how do you feel about how did you feel Campaspe?
Yeah, it was really, really strong start. I loved that. That was a bit of an antidote for some of the stuff we've been reading about Jupiter just recently as well. To just hear her putting them all in their place. And then it got quite soppy, which is less my strong point. But yeah, it was really nice to read, and it felt quite genuine as well. The soppy stuff. It didn't, like sometimes it feels a bit like it's been laid on thickly with a trowel.
Yes, I did love that one, that last speech where she calls herself a foolish wench and just tries to make herself love Alexander, but she doesn't love him. Yeah, Lynn, wonderful job as Apelles, and especially that monster speech with a song at the end of it.
I didn't really remember that from our first read, and I did go through and highlight, but I somehow missed that. So, yeah, Apelles, what were they thinking that casting me as Apelles? I mean, he's like a 20-year-old young man, and I'm not that. But I do remember when we were talking about it in the first look that when none of us were, or few of us were familiar with how the play shakes out, those first scenes between Campaspe and Apelles seemed kind of creepy. So at least I knew that you want to play that really innocent and sincere, that he's basically kind of got an adolescent crush on her, because you're not going to be satisfied. The audience isn't going to be satisfied with the ending if he's like creepy hitting on her. He's got to be kind of all moony. So I had that to I'm glad I knew that.
I'm glad too. I mean, Lily's phrasing is often so elaborate that the challenge is to speak as though one just thought of it, and those lines that
yeah, just parsing the syntax can be really challenging. So yeah.
Yes, and I thought everyone here did a very good job of that today. Elizabeth, especially, you had a speech very early on that sets up the situation of the play as Melippus, a character who I think we never see again. But
it was just a one shot.
But you set up Diogenes in that speech, and I thought you did so very, very nicely, and you played this plethora of other characters, and I don't know, thoughts?
I think someone said in the chat, I think it might have been you, Liza, that the characters are really well drawn. And I think that, apart from Diogenes, who is this kind of like overarching wise figure that is like no nonsense, all of the other characters read really well. And I think nearly all of them have speeches that I think it was very economical and very democratically put together. The text really flows. It had a tremendous sense of flow today, and it was very, very engaging.
It's fun.
Yes, absolutely. And so I realized I have neglected to speak with the conqueror of the world, with Alexander himself. And one of the things I'm really interested in here is, well, first of all, Daniel, your general thoughts on Alexander, but also perhaps your thoughts on the Alexander-Hephaestion relationship.
General thoughts on Alexander. If I just read that I was reading Alexander the Great, I would have had an absolutely different picture of him than what was in this play. Yeah, it was hard at the beginning to put my finger on him because I'm thinking, wait a minute, isn't he like a military warrior, conqueror, and whatnot? So what is he doing talking about like love and all of this stuff and just generally going to other people for counsel while he's proclaiming himself to be a god? It seemed like more like he wanted to be ruled in a sense by others. Not sure if I've got other thoughts on the character other than that, but for me it was fun to play it because it's not what I would have expected from him, and I think audiences wouldn't either. It's
true. I mean, there are it strikes me that there are plays about Julius Caesar, but there are also plays about young Julius Caesar and Cleopatra, and that sort of strikes me as a parallel. And I suppose Alexander, not having gone to Persia yet, he might not yet be Alexander the Great. He might be just like Alexander the OK at this point.
The cool.
I guess it reminds me, I don't know what, I mean, thinking about just the Han Solo depiction of him in his early age, it seems a little bit just at odds with what I picture as Harrison Ford's depiction of Han Solo later in life.
It's true. This is prequel Alexander.
Right.
So, Eric, you were, among many other characters, you were Alexander's BFF and possible BF, Hephaestion.
Yeah, it was basically, he was so anti-love and partly anti-woman. I don't know, there was a part where going, misogyny, but also, obviously I had to ignore that. It was just fun to be able to go, yeah, love. That's such a teenage, childish notion. How dare they? Yeah, that was just really fun. Whenever, I was trying to picture that whenever he was talking to other people, Hephaestion would either be next to him or sort of like unseen by him, just sort of, going on about, making faces and that kind of grimacing and that kind of thing.
Yes, I do like because in so many plays, romantic love is portrayed as this, this sort of all-powerful thing. And I like the amount of anti-love stuff, both from you and from Diogenes, that there was. And also the fact that the women we met, Campaspe, Timoclea, Lais, mostly seemed to be hetaeras or the courtesans. We certainly didn't meet any retiring maidens. These women weren't shy about speaking their minds. And I like that. Alexandra?
I was just going to add, and there's also a goodly amount of distinguishing between love and lust. Between, you think you love this person, but really you want their body. And, there isn't a lot of philosophical discussion of real and proper love that should be like this. But it does end in a way that kind of, supports the idea of love over lust, of this woman that has been fought over or kind of desired by two different characters, ending up with the man that she loves, not just the man that wants her.
Yes, and it can be argued that it was a greater act of love in Alexander to recognize that to act for the greater good, and to recognize that these two people loved each other more than he loved Campaspe. So who knows? Maybe more kings should hang out with philosophers. It also intrigued me.
Come to my tub anytime.
Excellent. Party in the tub after the broadcast. Alan, you were also a philosopher. Manet's probably the clown of the piece, right?
Yeah. I mean, Manet's is a good, fun part, and I love Diogenes' worldview because it's actually fairly close to mine. Cynicism is the armor of the romantic, and I saw Manet's as being sort of somewhat affected by that, but he ends up not quite getting to full cynicism, but certainly to full sarcasm in quite a lot of places. But it was the overall balance of the piece where you get these very chunky speeches, in some cases by the lead characters, as it were. And yet when you get the servants, the three serving guys on, it's all very fast action, quick fire dialogue or trialogue in some cases, and just playing off one another. And I think that's can be quite tricky to get across without an awful lot of rehearsal and in-person contact. I think we got a reasonable flavour of it successfully.
I think we did, and I like this flavor. I would have 2 scoops. And Manes, of course, never without his sidekick, Psillus. Rachael, you played Psillus among a plethora of other parts and sang very beautifully also. Everyone handled their singing wonderfully. So thoughts, experiences, emotions?
I do like those scenes with Psillus and Manes. I loved Diogenes. I think Lyly was one of the first people that we read when I first started reading with Beyond Shakes. And I realized coming to today's session that this is probably a good time to get back to him, because I really didn't pick up on a lot of what he was doing back then. But there's such a different tone to him that I didn't pick up on the first time, that this is so, I don't know, this is so incredibly funny. And I was laughing out loud for so many parts of it. And I'm glad I was muted, but yeah.
It was extremely lol-worthy, it must be said. Yes, other works by John Lyly are available on our YouTube channel. Our similarly named, not us, but neighbors and friends before Shakespeare are currently preparing a production of Lyly's Galatea for next year, which looks to be very exciting. You can follow that on the hashtag Galatea 2022. Now, Lyly, if you haven't read Galatea, I highly recommend it. You can watch our rendition right here, or indeed the Show Must Go Online's rendition on their Patreon. Yes, you can. So Lyly is interesting in that he is often more overtly queer than other playwrights of his era. I use queer as an umbrella term, not as a slur, because it's hard to fit early modern people into modern categories. And what we've been talking about the nature of love, the end of this play makes me think, if Campaspe ends up with Apelles, then the other people who end up together are Alexander and Hephaestion, who certainly have an idealized heroic friendship, and Alexander speaks of Hephaestion as his second self. He says to Hephaestion, you speak to Alexander. And then he talks, in his very last speech, Alexander talks about, good Hephaestion, when all the world is one and every country is thine and mine. So, it's not necessarily, there isn't a lot of sexual innuendo between the two, and believe me, when Lyly wanted to do sexual innuendo, he could. But I would argue that it is homoromantic, perhaps, as you could, I suppose, either play it as an exalted friendship or as a partnership from which the affair of Campaspe is a distraction, perhaps. Who knows? That is for others to determine, and perhaps when we do a second look, which, when we do it, will be available on our YouTube channel, we can look more at that. Alexandra.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the last thing you said, which is, we were talking earlier about there isn't a great deal of discussion of love, but there is a form of love that has nothing to do with romance, and so indisputably, these are people who care enormously about each other. That's the important part. And they end up going off together to do an important thing, which is conquer the world. And you just mentioned distraction, which was the thing I wanted to latch on to. It's almost as though the play is saying, thank goodness that Alexander didn't end up deciding to stay behind with Campaspe and play happy families, because thereby he went on to do much bigger things, such as go and conquer the world. She would have been a distraction from the really important business of that stuff, which I think is it's my interpretation of that speech of when all the world is conquered and his mind yours.
Yeah, I valid. If we it's sort of a Marvel what if situation, and Rachael. It was merely a Baroque gesture rather than a thought. So yeah, if Alexander had allowed himself to be swayed by the softer thoughts of love, he might have stayed in Athens and discussed philosophy and been a lifelong romantic, rather than slaughtering thousands of Persians and conquering their territory.
Which would, of course, have been a worse outcome.
Yeah.
I mean, the play does, valorize that conqueror persona. But what I like about this is that it, I think it really leaves sort of open to our reaction, which is the more desirable fate, the life that that Campaspe and Apelles will have together, or being famous like Alexander, which it doesn't really come down on one is more desirable than the other. Everybody gets what's kind of appropriate for them. It doesn't necessarily say, oh, love, that doesn't really count, or conquering the world means nothing if you don't have love. It really leaves that open, and that's one of the I think, and that's one of the things I really like about this text.
Yeah, it absolutely does, and so again, this ends up being quite a philosophical play, even as much of the philosophy is played for comedy. But you have, the question of which is greater. To renounce the trappings of wealth, or to be a court follower, which is greater, to be a lover or to conquer the feeling of love in yourself and then conquer everyone else? Which is more to be prized, love or friendship? Why not have both? Anyway, we having read this play, I think it's fair to say we enjoyed it, and we will look forward to a second look when the time comes. And yes, all that remains is for me to thank our roomful of wonderful readers, and for us to say farewell.